I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we have the minutes from April 13th for review and approval.
I move that we approve the minutes from April 13th.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We have to review and approve bills for payment. We have warrant 22, 22P, and from the Conservation Commission we have number 9. Conservation Commission number 9.
Go for it, Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would move approval then of warrant 22, warrant 22P, and Conservation Commission number 9.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, the Conservation Commission's warrant is for filming, BCTV filming of their several programs they've done. Warrant 22P is our payroll for town employees, and warrant 22, the total for that is $14,467.46. The money's being spent on fuel, gravel, payroll transfers that include insurance and retirement. We have our monthly sheriff's department billing, and they spent 19 hours in town last month. Some money from the Planning Commission went to the Wyndham Regional Commission through the municipal planning grant that they got. And we have some electric bills and miscellaneous parts for repairs of the loader and vehicles at the town garage. So, with that, any
There was an $1,800 invoice in there, which I'll check with Lee. I think that might have been the hydraulic pump maybe on the truck, I'm not sure, but which he had talked to Hugh and I about one day. But there wasn't any detail of what the work done's for so I'll just follow up with Lee. But,
Okay. Good.
I hope we have some detail, but I think it might be that pump that he talked about.
Mhm.
And the state police were in town pretty serious in the last week too, because they surprised me right over here at the town garage one evening. So I got by, but just
got
barely
just a
apparently.
warning,
Yeah. But it was good to see them parked over here, and then they were back on Route 5 too. So
Yeah,
that was good.
right. So, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And leave those, so there are 3 items that can be signed. We don't have any visitors right at the moment, so we'll move on. If anyone wanders in, we'll give them some time to make comments. But under correspondence for information, we have the zoning administrator's quarterly report. Anything in that catch your eye?
No.
No? Okay.
Look good.
Nice. From VLCT, we have a legislative update, just for review. There were 2 decisions from the DRB that were included in there. One for Miller, a property on Miller Road, and the other one was, where was that one? A sign for
Turner Renard. Yeah.
Yep, on Route 5. There was a letter from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation regarding a public notice for a draft indirect discharge permit for the Maple Valley ski area. And that raised some eyebrows when that first came in, because of the portion of the letter that said it was a permit for allowing indirect discharge into the West River. And so I followed up and made some calls and found a person who could answer my questions. And it means that, let's see, I'll back up a little. ski areas, any business with 5,000 gallon or larger septic system needs to be inspected annually, because Maple Valley is inactive. They've just been renewing the permit after a 5-year period.
And that's a 10,000 gallon
Yeah,
system.
yeah. Or up to 10,000, I think it's 6,000. So, this is just, Maple Valley's just renewing this permit, and it doesn't mean there's a pipe that hangs out over the West River. But it just means that any septic system on that side of town is going to, the water, after it's gone through the leach field and soil, is going to end up in the West River. Just like on the east side of town, any septic system is eventually going to end up in the Connecticut River. So that my eyebrows went back down to resting position. So that's my report on that. Any questions? Anything you want to discuss under that? Here's
Back from Kelly.
Hugh Warren.
Wow, I guess so. Nope.
Okay. Okay. We've just done the warrants and the minutes. I tried to talk slowly, so.
I tried not to get a speeding ticket.
Lori, I have an agenda in my thoughts. Thank you.
Let's see, so we've got correspondence for discussion and/or action. And we have to review and sign the LEOP. But I think Dawn is going to be coming tonight, so we could maybe hold off on that until she comes. Let's see. A couple of us were at the Planning Commission's meeting to
3 of us, yeah.
interview they were interviewing the 2 candidates for the zoning administrator. And you maybe saw the letters that went back and forth. The plan right now is they're going to, they were following up on recommendations, references. They were going to, at their regular meeting on May 3rd, take a vote to recommend a candidate that they would then forward to us for our consideration. Our next regular meeting would be on the 11th of May. And so, what would you like to do? Would you like to have the candidate come to our meeting on the 11th?
Well, I guess I would just add that I think everybody there was especially impressed with one of the candidates in particular, I guess, who was under, and they're checking references on that candidate. I regret I will not be here for the meeting on the 11th or the 26th for that matter. And I actually raised the question, I wasn't sure whether, there was a need, for that candidate to come back, but of course, Hugh, you and Steve would not have yet have met that candidate, so I guess I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
I mean, I'd be comfortable with, 3 of you heard it, and it would be the recommendation of the planning commission, so I would be comfortable with that. I don't think I would want a follow-up interview.
What, is it an interview, or are we just gonna speak to the candidate? And
The process goes, the planning commission recommends someone, and then it's up to us what we'd like to do. So
We could invite the person to come and speak with us, but if we don't need to do that, if you and Steve are fine with the 3 of us having met them and and going with our acceptance of the recommendation.
we do have to, the planning commission is not negotiating the wage or that this person will receive, and so there's probably some need to talk with them at some point.
I mean, I would like to meet them, but
Yeah.
myself, just having worked with the zoning administrator before and working with them again. I mean, I don't know, waste the person's time, but at some point I'd like to meet them.
Yeah. So, since we'll have the recommendation after the May 3rd meeting, we could go ahead and schedule, see if their candidate could come to our May 11th meeting then. So we can
Yeah, so what would
chat.
make things more, or what would help things to be efficient in terms of what questions, what things would we need to, I mean, in terms of a letter of hire and the salary and the, all of that.
Good questions.
I mean, so,
we have a job description.
right,
We have let's see, the gray area that I see is at town meeting we had a budget approved for our zoning administrator that was based on Charlotte being the zoning administrator, and so that's the amount of money that was approved. We, on Charlotte's recommendation, went from 15 hours a week to 12 hours a week for the next fiscal year.
and that recommendation was made based on what rationale?
Charlotte had
She'd cleaned up a lot of stuff from the
Back,
past
yes.
and got things in order, so this person is starting in a
yes,
good solid place
yes,
moving
the
forward.
house has been cleaned.
The house has been cleaned,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
So,
Right, I remember.
so that was, had Charlotte continued,
Right.
she would have thought she could do the job in 12 hours.
Mm-hmm,
So,
And because it's a person with less experience, we might not choose to offer them the same hourly rate that we would have offered Charlotte
that
had
would,
she continued.
yeah, that would be my thinking.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, I get, not really, I guess, so is this an at-will position type thing, or is it is it?
It's, yes, I believe in Vermont it would
All employment,
be,
I think, is at will. Yeah.
Okay.
It is for a 3-year
Mhm.
term,
Mhm.
sort of.
Sort of. What does that mean? We
only
sort
the-
of do Robert's rules, sort of.
Yeah, a little. Well, it would be for a 3-year. It would definitively be a 3-year.
Mhm.
I guess it's not really a contract, is it?
It's an appointment.
An appointment. Okay,
Okay.
there. That's the word I was looking for.
Mhm.
And do we have in our personnel manual, our new, is there a probationary period?
Yes. Up to
Okay.
90 days.
Okay.
Yes. And then they just wear the ankle bracelet or
Okay.
after that.
That's for the next 60 days.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I've got to get a new one,
Right, so I guess the question for me is, the planning commission recommends to us, we take that recommendation and perhaps offer the position to someone. Then that person has to accept the position, but they have to have all the information in order to accept it. So
Right.
we would have a letter of hire at some point that would have the information in of the hourly rate, the number of hours, da 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 da. And so, is that something that we would want to have ready at that meeting on the 11th, or is the 11th just the time when we're meeting her again and all, going to then make those decisions?
I think it'd be nice to have it ready, and at that point it's an offer. And then that person gets a week or a few days to.
Yeah, I mean, she
Yes,
could
yes.
say yes right then
Sure.
and there, or
Yeah.
she could say, I'll let you know tomorrow,
Yeah.
or I'll let you know in a few
Right.
days.
And I thought we'd been trying to be gender neutral,
Yes,
Yeah, right, right.
yeah,
the applicants.
the applicant, thank
Yes.
you,
Well,
the applicant,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so, do you want to okay, do you want to decide this evening what will,
What we would offer,
yeah,
No,
An applicant.
Yeah, clearly it was 12 hours a week.
Right, yeah.
And I think the consensus at the meeting, was that, we didn't want to pay the applicant Charlotte's rate, given the fact that they're just starting.
right,
I heard $15 an hour mentioned several times.
Mhm.
what's the current hourly rate? For
Um,
the GA now?
starting in the new fiscal year, it would have been almost $17, $16.99 or so.
Mhm.
So would we then, because it's in our budget, possibly add a couple hours to the 12 hours per week and give her a little more time, maybe the first year anyway, to familiarize and work through things? In other words, if we're offering less
Yeah.
per hour, we still budgeted a certain dollar amount, we might be able to get a couple more hours for her a week, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
might be beneficial to her to have a couple more, or them, the applicant.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just, I'm
I
just
think,
so-
I think that's a good idea,
Throwing an
Steve.
idea.
Given this person's qualifications as well, I think there's $500 budgeted for the planning commission for taking notes. And those hours are, I guess, would be part of, or no, the compensation would be in addition to the hour, the amount we have budgeted.
I think I would suggest that we consider the 12 hours and the $15 an hour. And then there is that introductory period, the probationary period. And at that point, then we would be in a position to, offer more hours, or, it gives us some leeway. We don't need to use that all up just because it's budgeted right from the get-go.
That sounds good, Sherilyn.
Will there be some overlap though, where we're paying two while there's training going on? That'd be my.
Good
thing.
question.
I would almost think we'd want to dedicate some hours
Charlotte
to allow Charlotte
Is
to.
prepared to do that.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's gonna take up some of that money that
Mhm.
was from the $2 an hour or whatever, $1.90 an hour.
Because we'll be paying two people for a period,
Right,
or does Charlotte stop at that point?
I-
She's up to 60 days.
I think she needs to be compensated for the time she's training the
Absolutely.
person,
Absolutely.
yeah. So,
Right.
Not take it
Charlotte
from
is
her treasurer
here.
job.
Right now, she's, here as the zoning administrator, she's here as the treasurer, and she's here sometimes as a lister,
Yeah.
so.
So then Joe brought up an interesting point, which I get a little of this information secondhand through the planning commission, but was it discussed that she might be the recorder, or the applicant might be the recorder for the planning commission too?
We did discuss that,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Right. We'll go through the tape and we'll make it
Yeah.
all gender neutral
Mhm.
later.
does that have anything to do with our discussion here though? I mean, that's something, if the person has 12 hours here, the planning commission, they don't need our go-ahead to then employ
Right.
the person.
Right.
Right.
I just
I-
wondered if that, I was more informationally, was that offered at the time? That position offered at the time?
Already
Or
offered.
discussed at
They
the time?
discussed it.
And
They
not
discussed it.
offered, but discussed, yeah. thank you.
Yeah, and this is, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember if that was while the applicant was there or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going back, Hugh, to your position, in terms of wanting to meet her or talk with the applicant, it would seem to me that when the planning commission makes their recommendation on the 3rd to us, would it be appropriate for Hugh to have a phone call or, do something on his own so we're really prepared on the 11th? I mean, if we're going to have a letter of hire already, and be positioned to offer it, it's a little awkward for you as one person to raise concerns at that
Yeah.
point. We're a little too far down the
Yeah.
road.
I don't think I'd have a concern. I think for me, the 11th, if I just didn't think we were going to even invite the person in. Now you got me on there. I didn't even think you're going to invite me in.
Let's start over.
Yeah.
Back to
It's
table.
not that. I just wanted to meet the applicant before the first time I met was in the office. So I think the 11th is fine with me. If that's
Okay.
the day that we're
All right.
offering the
You're-
employment and the thing, and I get to say hello, I'm Hugh Worden, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard. I mean, that's
Okay.
um,
Well, it's not welcome aboard yet because she won't have accepted it yet. We're offering. Oh my God, it's impossible. It's impossible.
right.
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that way
Great.
it moves things along. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a little different scenario because I get some information through the planning
Oh, yeah.
commission, so I'm probably a little
That
more.
ex parte
Yeah,
communication.
yeah. So probably that's a good idea, and then
Yeah.
we can move things along that evening.
But if you do have any concerns beforehand, if concerns come up for you, it would be good to somehow deal with those
Yeah.
if we can prior to the meeting on the 11th.
and I
so
don't
that-
foresee that. I just
Right.
want
Perfect.
to meet and say hello and
yeah, because you and I
Sounds
haven't
good.
met
Right.
the applicant directly.
And I can Skype in from a different continent under our
Yeah.
new policy, but I don't think
I don't think so.
I don't think my vote will be necessary.
No.
The, so sometimes we
2:00 in the morning.
have, people come in before our meeting and for interviews. And do you want to do that?
Invite an applicant at 15 minutes before or something like that.
Yeah, because it is a personnel issue and almost,
So it's off TV, it's off the record, kind of at that point, at quarter of.
well, what would you like to do?
I don't have a preference. I mean, I really rather not keep showing up early, but just to
Mhm.
either one. I mean, I'll come in 15 minutes early and we can provide the letter
You
and
can do an executive session before before 6 o'clock to do a personnel matter.
Okay? 15 minutes.
I would be comfortable with the recommendation of the three of you that were at the interview for the best applicant, but whatever you'd like to do.
but we don't want to mail the letter offering the position, right? We actually want the person here to give them the letter is what I'm
Yeah.
I think you could just put it on the agenda and hand the person the letter.
Yeah, it doesn't have, does it need to be in executive session? No.
No. Okay. So just part of our regular meeting?
They get the letter, offers written, like
Yeah.
X dollars per hour, and then are we going to say at 6 months you're going to get a
Yeah,
raise?
well, Lori will
work?
write up the offer letter, right? Won't you? Isn't that something you would do?
I can, we've never done one before.
Oh, really?
But, yeah.
Oh.
but sure.
Or you seem to have a pretty good plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm wondering, wouldn't it be nice to give the letter to the applicant before the meeting?
Well, then what's there to do at the meeting?
The applicant could accept, I would presume. I just wouldn't want it to come as a surprise and have the applicant say, "Oh my goodness, I was expecting to get $30 an hour" or something like that.
I guess we could mail it, and then if the applicant accepts, we could just say, could you please come on the 11th and give us the exception formally?
But we need to make a decision as a
Yeah.
select board to accept the recommendation of the
Right.
planning commission.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
it hasn't been
actual
made yet.
activity
No,
on the 11th, is
exactly,
for
yeah.
us to accept the recommendation. And we're just trying to sort of coordinate things so that we accept the recommendation, it's duly noted in our minutes, and if we're ready, it would be so efficient to be able to hand them an offer letter, but we
Right.
don't have to do that until afterwards.
And if we have the rate in mind and we have the I don't know exactly, but let's say it was 3-4 hour mornings or however, whatever the situation was, and that was ready to go, then I would think we would be able to do that.
I think it would be good to meet with the applicant who is the recommendation of the planning commission 15 minutes before and go through the details of it, so that then when we meet as a select board, in our select board meeting, we can accept the recommendation of the planning commission and then, like you said, hand the letter of hire to her, to the applicant. And I was doing so well. You know, whether the applicant accepts it at the meeting or not doesn't matter. We've done our
Right.
business and we just wait for a response.
We either have to do that, or we have to pick somebody that would contact the applicant and say, here's the rate that we're talking about, and here's the hour, the days that we're talking about, and I mean, you wouldn't wanna hit somebody cold that evening, and I don't know how much detail you got into in your discussions.
Not that much.
Okay, yeah.
I guess I was thinking if you were to send it early, you could send it in draft form, because, you know,
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
we're probably back to meeting a few minutes ahead of time, have this discussion.
But
ahead
we
of
do
time.
not, we don't wanna send a letter of hire before
Before we
we've
take action.
officially accepted the recommendation of the planning
Right.
commission.
Yeah.
But we'd like to be ready to do that, I think, at the meeting.
Mhm.
That's the direction I'm.
I think I'm leaning towards Hugh's idea of meeting 15 minutes or 10 minutes early for a few minutes. I guess
Mhm.
I think that's
Okay.
seems prudent to discuss the rate and the anticipated time we would expect.
Right. I mean, and I'm very content with the recommendation of planning commissions. That's
Right.
not my concern at
Yeah.
all.
Good.
Yeah.
You know, I don't.
But at that point, we may find that there's not interest in the job
Right.
based on some of the details of the job. So
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get the recommendation, you know, after their May 3rd meeting. I could schedule this applicant, the candidate. I could give them the gist of what we've discussed, so they have an idea
Yeah.
of what they're coming to, and then they come to the 15 minutes ahead, and so it's not all just brand
Yeah.
New at that
yeah,
point.
there.
that'd
So,
be nice.
you know,
I think
then
that would be,
we negotiate if we need
Yeah.
to, or
mhm.
and then later on in our regular meeting, we can accept the recommendation, if that's
Mhm.
our choice, and offer
And make an offer.
make an offer. Yeah.
Mhm. Good, I think that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And I mean, we're just figuring this out because
Yeah.
it's not, there's no
Mm-hmm.
procedure. We don't go through this very often.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking 12 hours, 15, a probation period of 90 days
Mhm.
according to our
Mhm.
policy,
Mhm.
and then there would be a review, and possibly we might, because of the budget that we'll have to work with, we could possibly add more hours or change the pay rate, or what would you like me to?
Well, at that point, you'll have a handle on, you know, how many additional hours Charlotte had worked also after 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't. It's hard to say. I mean, because you want to go, well, 6 months from now, what do you want? Do we need more hours, or do we want to wait a year for a pay increase? I mean, I think like sitting here tonight, it's kind of hard to just make that call in some ways. I think.
I don't think there's any pressure to spend the money just because it's budgeted.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Let's just stick with the $15 an hour and not
Okay.
think ahead too far.
Great. All right. That's what I'll do then.
Yeah.
That's what I'll
But a
do.
3-year appointment. So I mean, eventually, the intent would be to provide a raise, with say 12 months from
Exactly.
now or something.
It's very nice to
Right.
have that flexibility to do that.
Sure. Okay. Great. And along with the annual reviews, right?
Yes, right.
Another portion of our.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll wait for the planning commission to make their recommendation. I'll schedule the try to schedule the candidate for our May 11th meeting, 15 minutes ahead,
Mhm. And you will have spoken with the candidate
and
prior,
given them
the basics.
yes, basics, or I'll just tell them to watch the show.
Yeah, right. No, don't.
Okay.
If they're smart, they will.
So do we have to make a motion to $15 an hour? I mean, is this like something we need to, or I don't want to leave and realize we needed to,
I don't.
or is it just a decision
I think.
that we've agreed on $15 an hour?
We don't know who the candidate is going to be, so it's a sort of a if-then situation. You know, if the candidate is a less experienced person than Charlotte, I mean, something could happen between now and then where, you know, neither of the people that were interviewed are available.
Yeah.
And so then we're back to square one. So,
I don't think we need a motion, but then again, you know,
Well,
we'll make the
I'm
motion.
pretty loose on
We'll
these
make
rules.
the motion at the meeting, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
to this letter
Yeah.
of hire that has this information in it.
Okay,
Um,
that sounds good to me.
Mhm.
Good.
Sounds good to you?
Mhm, absolutely.
Everyone? You?
Yeah.
We're all on board. Great. So, now Don Hubbard, our Emergency Management
Yes.
Director.
Wow.
Do you have that wheel? Do you need help with a wheelbarrow for that
Goodness.
300-page?
What a document.
Most of it is just cut and paste though.
But still, something to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So,
so the LEOP, just for our viewers in Kazakhstan, it's the Local Emergency Operations Procedure
plan.
Plan. That's what I was going to say. And it has to be renewed or revised every how many years?
Every year.
Every year. Wow, I don't remember doing this last year. Do you?
No.
No.
You
It
did.
happens when you get old.
Wow.
Do you remember?
I don't remember, but I remember working on it for a long time before, but.
Okay. Let's see. Any other background you want to fill us?
You don't do it, you don't get funding if it coincides with funding
Yeah.
availability and stuff. But
So
it's
if we
filed through Wyndham Regional.
so if we had an emergency, a bridge washes out.
It coincides with the
Yeah.
funding,
And,
but mostly it has all of the guidelines that I need. So it's the binder I pull out and say, there it is. This is everything I need. So kind of like what we had for Vermont Yankee. This is everything else.
Right. Yes, that's why I was calling it the procedures rather than the plan, because that's, so I did unzip that file and I did read through it, and I found that after, you know, the first 90 pages, there wasn't a lot in there.
It was mostly forms.
Yeah.
There's a huge section of forms that you could use. And that's it.
Yeah.
A lot of it is could use.
Mhm.
The first 17, 19 pages is the important has to be filed. The
Mhm.
rest of it is if you want to use it, you can use it. If you don't, you don't need to. But almost, I would say a majority of the towns add the extra just to have it there and ready to go. There's a lot of information that's missing still though. I put it in the email, like identifying contractors. You know, it's one of those, if I miss one, what, you know,
Right.
Identifying contractors for.
like construction contractors, there's a section where you can list out who's got dump trucks
I see.
in town. So if I start listing who has dump trucks, what happens if I miss somebody? What kind of political, is it going to cause a problem or is it not? And is it really going to make a big difference in the long run? You know, and a lot of times it's, if I have Lee and if I have Rick or you guys around, it's okay, who has them and can you pull them up, you know, in the moment? So it's flexible, you know, how much do you want in there and how much do you not want in there.
So there are parts you haven't filled in because of that.
Yes.
That's a question you have.
Yes. Fire department members. I'm not listing every fire department member in there. If I want to know who's on the fire department, I'm going to call Rick or Rich or somebody on the fire department that I know of and say, I need to know who else is on the fire department.
And does that change sometimes too?
Yeah, it's
It's fluid.
yeah. So it's like I'm not going to go in and keep changing it over the course of the year.
And this has to be approved and sent in by when?
May 1st.
That's pretty soon.
Yes, it is. The holdup was waiting for the Vermont Yankee section because they took the big plan and condensed it as one of the annexes.
So would your ideal be submitting it on the 29th since the 1st is a Sunday?
I would like to be able to submit it tomorrow or actually email it to her tonight when I leave here.
Okay.
Just to make sure she gets it if
Yeah.
everybody's okay and I get the signature. But if it has to wait till Friday, then it has to wait till Friday.
No, I was just, I
yeah,
should have asked
no.
it in a more open way. What's your ideal scenario?
7 o'clock.
Okay.
So, you know, when I was going through it, you know, I didn't know, you know, the right phone number or, you know, the address for this fellow or that fellow. I just assumed that was right. Or so.
Lori picked up on a
Yeah,
couple
Lori,
that
That was good.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
And those have all been added to the
Laura's corrections.
current one,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yep, I went through and did a lot of the corrections. I didn't add the church as one of the shelters because it's not Red Cross approved.
okay.
So that's not added in. But if you want it in there, I can add it. It's just not a Red Cross approved. So it's something we would have to man ourselves, and who would take care of it, you know, who would oversee
Are they
and the
Are they
responsibilities.
hooked up to the generator at the town garage?
No, they
No.
bring the portable generators down when they've used it before.
Okay. All right.
You know, and then, you know, liabilities and that sort of stuff if you use the church. You know, where the school Red Cross comes in and it's theirs. So it is something we can address, you know, down the road. Red Cross is in the middle of finding a new person for this area. So I finally found the documents from the school and they're dated 2007. So
Yeah.
So Don, when you submit this, are you just submitting it for it to be on record, or is this being submitted and reviewed by some higher entity?
yeah, Alyssa at Wyndham Regional is the planning person. She actually has gone through it
Okay.
already, and there was a couple little things that I didn't have in there that I've got in there now, and then she takes it to the state and keeps it on file and does their state side of whatever it is that they do with it. But it goes to Wyndham Regional.
Okay. So this is my first one of these. So is this the one that allows us to get FEMA money if we meet a threshold? Is this or what does this one enable the town when we turn this in by May 1st?
One of those. The hazard mitigation is another plan that we talked about the last time I was here. So there's the two big plans now that we have to have, we don't have, that we should have in place for funding.
Okay. Is the hazard one that was like on the list somewhere to be
Yeah.
reviewed?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It's still in the the works.
Yep,
We
we've
had-
got one other town that's being worked on now, and then ours.
And we had a preliminary meeting with this, is that Alyssa?
Yep.
From Wyndham Regional Commission to get some raw information and for the hazard mitigation plan, and she was going to be working on that, and then she'd come back to the town.
The documents I found, we started one in 2011, and that was never finished.
Mhm.
And that's the last that we've got of anything. And
Mhm.
even talking with her, so there hasn't been one in place. And the one in 2011 was never finished.
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't pushed it, and we haven't pushed it. It's just one of those. It's kind of been forgotten about.
Right, I guess the thought was that it had been finished. I guess there was a little confusion over it.
Yeah.
It was sent to FEMA, was what I was told, and it got
Just-
lost in the shuffle there,
Okay,
so.
So are there parts of you mentioned the contractors and whether or not more should be added. Are there other parts of where it stands now that you have questions about?
No, that was the church and the contractors were the big parts, but that's in the section that the contractor part doesn't have to be filled out. That's the extra if we want it.
Mhm.
And then the church is the part I was kind of leery on anyways, but until we get a Red Cross person, there's not anything I can really do with it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the church can't.
No, it can.
It's
It,
just-
no,
it's
it
just
can
in
be
our
used. It's
plan,
just
right,
not in
yeah.
an official
Right.
capacity through Red Cross.
Right.
Mhm.
So I don't want to add it in there
Right.
as
Yeah.
an official place.
Mhm.
We'd use the Grange if I could use. I mean, if we need a shelter, there's
Sure.
enough places you can go knocking on doors and people would open up.
Mhm.
But the required information,
It's in there.
Okay.
and you're comfortable with it, and it's been reviewed by the person at Wyndham Regional.
Yep, she looked at everything.
Mhm.
So, it's a little known fact here that I don't spend a lot of time on the computer. So are we gonna get, printed copies of this for all of us at some point?
If you want a printed copy, all 300 pages.
We always did, I mean, we had the other plan.
We used to have the
The booklet.
REEP,
Right.
the Radiological Emergency
Right.
Evacuation Plan. We had a copy about the size of
Joe's
Joe's
book.
binder, yeah.
Could
Okay.
there be one copy for the
There's-
Yeah, maybe,
for the office, and then that first 18 pages or something that's the required information? Maybe that's the part to
Yep.
give us a
That's a
copy
good
of
idea.
There'll be a copy, at least one copy upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
but we can also keep one down here. Lori has a spot where she wants one to go down here and stuff, but at least one copy upstairs. But if each of you want your own copy, then I can make sure you have your own as well.
I'm okay with,
Just one floating down here.
yeah.
I am too.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
And once we have it down here, if you decide you want copies of certain pages, I can
Certain
just
yeah.
for you.
Great.
So is this something that we have to approve tonight then, or
Yes.
vote on? So,
Yep.
so full disclosure, I got this thing on the weekend. I couldn't unzip it, and I was gone all day today. I have not read through this thing, so
Okay.
I am going
I'm
to
gonna
abstain.
abstain. I'm gonna too, because I don't read 300 pages on the computer.
Well, I think what I
I think that
heard,
was only the first 90 that were really
yeah,
And I'm not sure I could have made it through them at 10 o'clock.
what I heard Dawn say was that it's only the first 18 pages that's
It's
required
Like
information.
18, 19 pages. It's until where the annexes start.
I mean, even if you and I abstained, you still got the majority,
Three.
and so it just,
Well, yeah, as long as you're comfortable. I just could unzip it when I was gone this
Yeah.
weekend. I didn't mind. So-
It's too big, it won't send as a regular PDF.
So, if the rest of us are okay with this, then I would accept a motion to sign the April 2016 LEOP.
So moved.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
all right, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so we have 3 ayes and 2 abstentions. Okay.
Not because we have issues with it, that's not.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to sign this right here. Just calls for 1 signature. So I wrote Steve Blaybeck there.
Alrighty.
And it's maybe not a bad idea to print out the first, it looks like 17 pages. You know, if people need a printed copy to look at, you know, I mean, or
I can look at the one. here.
you'll look at the
No,
binder.
I've got it here, I've got it, I
Okay.
just didn't,
All right.
when I got home and it unzipped it, I didn't have time to
Yeah,
go through it.
okay.
So, can I just ask you, you know, I know you were waiting on that, the piece from the
Vermont Yankee.
Vermont Yankee, but, you know, I know it's you're bound by some things, but you see where I'm going, like, we got this 3 days before we're supposed to approve it. Maybe, you know, next year we can,
Go a little quicker.
if we can.
Yeah. I did drag my feet.
You know, the weekend. Well, I don't know if
It's-
you're waiting on other people too. But if we could just get some of it,
It's one of those that gets forgotten about
Yeah.
until you get the email from Alyssa saying,
sure.
don't forget by the end of next month. And then you're like, oh yeah, I got to do that.
Yeah.
And then you get the second nasty email from her. It's like, oh yeah, I really got to do that. So it's one of those, you got to keep it in the front of your mind that
Yeah.
it's time to do it. And a lot of the sections, you know, looking through were never filled out before,
Mhm.
even back when I was doing this prior,
Mhm.
sections that I never filled out before. And it's like, wow, those really have to be filled in.
So do you have a sense of how many hours that it took you this year to?
I didn't keep track.
Mhm.
I probably should have, but it was piecemeal,
Mhm.
you know, half hour here, hour and a half there.
Mhm.
It wasn't sit down in one chunk,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks
Thanks.
very
Yeah.
much, Don.
That's
Any other
pretty
Questions
tedious thing,
for
I'm
Dawn
sure.
while she's here?
Well, I'm just thinking that this, you know, you said this is your, you know, reference guide. And so I will be glad for your, you know, acquainting us with, and we, you know, just becoming familiar with it.
right.
Because it's the kind of thing where emergencies, we respond well to them if we've already incorporated the steps,
Right.
as opposed to in the emergency reading what the steps are.
A lot of
So-
it's going to follow along what we did with Vermont Yankee.
Right,
I mean, we've
exactly.
done that enough.
Mhm.
Well, some of us.
Mhm.
I don't know how much you've done with training. I don't think.
I think
you've
you'd
been-
be okay. I think
Yeah, you know,
You-
just some of us have gone through so many times. You've been through enough of them that it becomes automatic that this and this and this and this. So now it's just transferring that over to everything else.
Well,
But to go through the plan,
the fire drills are important.
yeah.
Okay, good.
So
Great.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Don.
So, next on our agenda, we have a letter from Richard Epstein regarding aggressive dogs on town roads, and he wanted this read into the record. So with your permission, I'll read this letter.
Please do.
Okay. Dear Dummerston Selectboard, I'm writing to lodge a complaint and encourage you to make some changes to address problem dogs and their owners more effectively in the future. I've been aggressively advanced upon and had to fend off attack a number of times over several years by a dog owned by Ned and Anita Childs. The dogs barreled out from the Childs property and onto the public road, barking, lunging, lips snarled and teeth bared. Fortunately, I have not been bitten, but the experience is quite scary and upsetting. These incidents have been reported to Zeke Band when they happen each time. The story repeats. The aggressive threat of attack, my report, Zeke addresses the problem with the Childs. The Childs assure him they will keep their dog under control. The dog is not kept under control. An aggressive advance on the public road happens again. I might add that previous dogs that the Childs have owned have also engaged in this upsetting and offensive behavior. I know at least one of these attacks did result in a bite. I have two questions that I would very much appreciate having answered. What can be done about this particular dog? How can the town change certain statutes in regard to aggressive dogs on public roads so that the animal control officer can have meaningful results in the future? Please read this letter into the town record at your April 27th meeting. I'm available to meet with you should you have any questions of me in regard to this issue. Thank you, Richard A. Epstein. So, any?
So you're the animal control officer.
I'm one of them.
What do we need to do to make this better, easier, different?
Let's see. I was thinking we should, maybe when we have our goals meeting, we should put the whole animal control issue on our list to be discussed at some point during the year. Wayne and I have been the animal control officers for, I don't know, maybe 5 years or so. And during that time, I sort of thought our dog control ordinance wasn't particularly adequate at times. But the more I've gotten, the more experience I've had. What I found is the state statutes that enable the town to have an animal control ordinance are somewhat lacking.
Okay.
So where I used to blame the ordinance, when I went further back and researched in the state statutes, the state statutes I think are the problem because they don't give the towns a lot of specific remedies to deal with aggressive dogs. So what I end up doing, and probably other animal control officers in town, other towns, I use a statute, this part of the state statute, and then I refer back to the town ordinance that lets Wayne or I take whatever action is necessary to mitigate a nuisance or aggressive dog, and then I go back and cite another statute. Anytime that I or Wayne go, say, to the Childs and try to deal with a problem, they have 21 days to come back to the select board and appeal an order that comes from the animal control officer. And we had that a couple years ago, a German Shepherd that had fondness for chickens.
The neighbor's chickens.
Yeah. The owner came and appealed.
And the order was something
What's generally I have been doing the last few years in situations like this with the Childs is cobbling together state statute and the Dummerston Animal Control Ordinance. I've ordered that the dog be kept tethered or, kenneled, or tethered or on a leash, but under their control at all times, and not to be allowed in the public right of way. So, I wrote the Childs a letter in July of 2013 telling them that's what they needed to do. For the most part, I think they've complied with that. There was an incident that prompted Richard Epstein's letter when the dog got loose due to a visiting, child letting the dog out, just when Richard was going by.
And what then would you fine somebody, or what's the?
We can. The dog ordinance allows the town to fine someone, and we can fine, $20. In certain situations, we can go up to $40. We could go up to $500 in a calendar year. Let's see. Having volunteer animal control officers. Sometimes I found the fines, work as a deterrent. Sometimes I use a fine in order as leverage to get the people in to license their dog, or just show that we're serious. There have been times when I think the fines are ineffectual. Sometimes the problem isn't the dogs, it's the people that own the dogs. And so, writing fines that then, the town would have to get the attorney or go to small claims court or superior court to collect. It's just, I think, not very effective.
Does the ordinance permit a dog to be impounded if the behavior is sufficiently egregious?
Yes, but there are no kennels that will take aggressive dogs. The Wyndham Humane Society, in the contract that we have with them, says they will not take aggressive dogs. I've gone to our pound keeper. We appoint 2 pound keepers, one who's a veterinarian in town, and no, they don't want to take aggressive dogs either. So I have a livestock trailer, but sometimes my pigs don't want
An aggressive dog in there.
yeah. So we're kind of in a bind so although we're empowered to impound an aggressive dog, there's no place where we can impound it. So the track that we've taken is to try to get the people to. There's no leash law in Dummerston. But we try to
If there
get
was a leash law, you'd have to enforce it, and it doesn't sound like we have really
the resources
good.
to do that.
Yeah.
There is a state statute that while we have no leash law, there's a statute of dogs running at large.
Yeah.
So a dog you can let your dog out on your property and it can run around and chase chickens if they're on you. But if it goes on someone else's property or the public right of way, it's considered running at large, and that's not allowed. So that's.
But we're in the same boat. I can think of a couple dogs that run at large.
Yeah.
But you're in the same boat. We don't have any. Well, of course they're not aggressive dogs, so then maybe you could
Impound them.
impound them.
I have to catch them first.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's been a problem. Sometimes they'll come right up to me, but and there have been times when there have been aggressive dogs, and there was an incident. There was a family on Camp Arden Road with a history of aggressive dogs, and I did get them to surrender one of those dogs at one point, and so sometimes things work out.
It seems that the best way to keep dogs from being at large or running into public right-of-ways is with a fence or with those collar things and then that invisible fence. I mean, that would be a way for an owner to make sure that a dog wasn't able to be at large or run into public right-of-ways, but
That's certainly an option. It's not an option for everyone.
right.
How about inviting the dog owners to join us in a meeting? To say that, you know, your neighbors,
Get them on TV, you mean?
yeah, exactly, and say that, you know, that
Public shaming.
your neighbors have expressed concern. How can we make this better for everybody?
Well, that is, I guess, two things I'd jump in at when you say that. Is that one of the few quasi-judicial things of the select board is vicious dogs, right? I mean, so how do you start that process to bring them in, and then at what point, what do you decide whether you're going to have the dog put down, or you're going to have no one takes the dog? And then the second part of that would be is at some point you just got to step up. If we can't just say it's a money problem, you know, if we got to fine them and we got to take them to court, then we got to take them to court and set a proper example that you've been told you got to take care of your dog. You know, you said we can't spend the $200, $300, whatever $100 to, I don't know what it costs, but I guess my point is at some point you have to enforce it, and if it costs money, it costs money, and that's part of running a town. And so it's a two-part thing. How do you do the quasi-judicial thing? And I would only say that because if your first letter was 3 years ago, so this is not like a first or second, or it's.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking about coming down so hard on folks as much as get them in for a conversation and say, look, this has been a problem for a number of years now, you know, and we don't want to keep hearing about it. And how can we together make this stop?
I agree, but if at some point you got to stop that conversation and press forward.
So
Right,
the
that should be a piece of the
procedure
process.
to have a public hearing on an aggressive dog, I don't have off the top of my head, but there is a procedure for doing that. And you know, there's certainly a procedure if, you know, I say the child's dog is aggressive and I say they've got to do this, they can come and have a public hearing, you know, if they want to challenge that rule. But,
And that's the hearing, to have the person who wrote the letter and the family there, and then they we hear both sides of the story and go from there. I mean, it's a process that's established. One time I didn't bring in that paperwork from the select board we went to, but there is like the vicious dog statute or ordinance, whether it's a state or town, but that outlines how to bring the parties in and hold the public hearing and then move forward.
yeah, there's a line between nuisance dogs and vicious dogs, and for the select board to take action that would be likely to win if it were challenged. The line that the state sets is the dog has to bite someone off of the owner's property. The person has to seek medical attention and then notify, you know, by writing or, you know, coming to the select board to get this process going.
Get it? You got to get bit before you can do anything.
And that's been part of the frustration when we had a dog on Camp Arden Road several years ago. It was a tornado of teeth that made life miserable for people down there, but it hadn't actually bitten anyone, and where they went to got medical attention, and so it was just having a conversation with the owner that finally resulted in them being willing to surrender the dog. But we didn't have the statutory authority to go in and seize the dog at that point.
So do you consider that situation a success?
Oh yeah.
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 Was that dog put down?
Yes, it was. It was decided that it was not adoptable, and so therefore it was put down.
Yeah, but maybe Joe's suggestion is good. I mean, but I think we should have follow-on steps in our mind. But we invite Richard and we invite the child in here and have a discussion. Bring them. I don't know if they talk face to face on their road or not, but I mean, at least as a start, we've invited them. We've initiated a process, and we're sort of the neutral. Now, whether anything happens, but at that point, we're starting the process of. What's the next step? Is it the hearing? Or,
Right.
I don't know,
And I don't even know that Richard would need to be here. I mean, he's written us a letter. You've read it,
Yeah.
and
It's on record.
and just invite them. Hopefully they would come.
Yeah, I believe that both should be here personally, just because you need both sides of it. We've got a letter. We haven't heard from them, but my opinion would be that everybody should come.
Okay, I think this would be a vicious dog hearing. It wouldn't be a regular select board hearing.
It would be, so we'd have to make it a hearing then,
Yeah.
not just a come in and talk about, it's on our
That-
agenda, we'd like
that's
to
what
talk about the dog.
That's what I think. What does our select board assistant think?
I have no idea.
Okay,
And I'd prefer to have it with a camera going in a meeting, and that's why I suggested just say that we've gotten this letter and we're wondering if you could come in and chat and see if we can resolve this together.
So, but with this particular situation, it's what I heard was that there was something that happened in 2013 that was addressed,
With a
and
the
different
same
dog.
problem was going on, this dog going into the
right in
road and
2013,
chasing. Yeah,
and it's
And-
now
yeah, and I wrote this letter, I visited with the child several times, and then wrote that letter stating that they had to keep the dog tethered or kennelled, and I don't recall there being any problems since that time. And then
until this one incident where
just
a visiting child happened to open the door and the
Right.
dog ran out, and so it seems like they're well intended and this was just an accident one time. It doesn't seem like it's a repeated event.
It sounded like to me that they had been trying to keep this dog controlled. They recognized the dog as a problem, and they've been, they know Richard jogs by their house, and so they've tried to keep this dog under control. But it got out this time. It's a scary situation. And people have, dogs shouldn't be chasing people on the right of way. It's,
Right,
that's by state statute.
right.
So,
Yeah, I guess before inviting them in or making that the next step, I'd want to know that this had happened more than just this one accidental time.
Well, I read it that it was a different dog that bit him, a different dog up
no,
there.
he doesn't
There's no
technically say
biting.
he was actually bitten.
Yeah,
He
it wasn't
knows
him that was bitten, it was somebody
Yeah.
else.
Oh, I see.
In the
Okay.
past,
And okay.
sometime
It was
in
another
the
different
past.
I
name.
see,
Yeah.
okay.
I like the idea of a letter from the select board, but because I've been involved with this and written them letters and I go and visit them, I prefer someone else write it, just stating that this has come to the select board's attention and it's a serious, we consider it a serious problem, and you know, get the letter, a copy of the letter I sent in 2013 as a reference that this was a problem. This was what we had said needed to be done, and
I find a squirt gun with ammonia in it is really helpful.
Pepper spray. Oh, yeah. Is it just out of curiosity, is it a big dog?
no.
Okay.
I would decline to write the letter.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, I guess I would write the letter, but we're not inviting them to come in, is that?
I mean, if it was just one accidental time that's happened since 2013, I don't feel that's grounds to invite them in. I feel like a letter is good. The next step would be, you know, but we also need to respond to Richard, because he's saying there was this one incident, and I'm also questioning your process. So we need to respond to him about our process. And we've had a long discussion about it. I think we've come up with some, you know,
Right.
I don't think he's necessarily going to be happy with a letter to the child's, but so we'd want to be able to give a little more concrete information about how we are going to
Right. I'd say
be
we
more forceful.
have another session about animal control later on this
That would be one of
spring
our
or summer,
goals.
one of the
Yeah.
goals, and try to come up maybe with a procedure that we would use to address issues like this within the statutes.
Familiarize ourselves with
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Maybe we could invite the other dog control person in.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. He's
Twain.
Wayne Emery.
Okay.
Yes. Do you have his phone number, just so we can put it on the bottom of the television screen here?
Great. So will someone respond to Richard?
I can call Richard.
Yeah,
Yep.
that'd be great.
And you'd like me to, I can write a letter to the child, so if you get me your prior
Yes.
letters.
Yep.
And if you could do that as soon as possible, because my
You're on your
schedule's
way out.
pretty tight, yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Joe, for doing that.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. So, okay. All right. So before you go home, we'll have those for you, I hope. So any more on that? Okay. Let's see. Well, look at that. Unfinished business. Setting a date for our select board goals meeting. Are we any closer to coming up with a date?
Well, I think we didn't set it last time because there were some other things that we were imagining coming up on alternate Wednesdays, and
Right.
we were waiting until the zoning administrator situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I really regret, I'm away for 3 weeks starting next Friday.
How much are you regretting that, Joe?
If we're trying to get this meeting in anytime soon, it's not gonna include me.
Okay, so you're pretty much out for
Until,
May.
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much out for May, exactly.
Right.
how important is it that Joe's there during our goal setting meeting?
Well,
I think it's pretty important to have all of us.
yeah.
Yeah, I would prefer not May myself.
Okay.
It's a pretty
Good.
busy month.
Let's go with June.
Let's look at June then.
So the 8th or the 22nd. Would we do it at a regular meeting? Do you normally do that?
And do it on an off meeting, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
we generally do it on.
okay. Did you do it on a Wednesday? Is that what you do, the same
Sure.
Wednesday?
Yeah,
Wednesday.
so it'd either be the 1st, the 15th, or the 29th. June 1st is the Wednesday right after Memorial Day weekend. I don't know if that
That-
makes a difference to people.
It's not as good for me, and then I'm in Montpelier that day.
Okay, so the
Okay.
15th
Is
of
that-
June?
Is that a public meeting or is it something?
No, it's like a work session.
Yeah, it's a work session.
So would it, just a thought, as opposed to like
we
taking it?
usually casual dress. That's what, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
shorts included. Yeah.
I mean, instead of another Wednesday, can you just not, I mean, is it just too much to like have your meeting 7:30, okay, the meeting's over and now we're gonna spend, I don't know how long they take, but I mean,
Well, that's an interesting
I would
idea.
almost be,
Rather just
I'd
do it
rather go marathon one night than
Yeah, how's that?
sprint.
sit with you?
Our goals meeting's usually what, a couple hours?
Well, because we'll be halfway through the year, our goals are going to
Maybe an hour. Yeah, and maybe the later in the evening we have it, the quicker it might go too.
I'll bring sandwiches.
Okay.
I mean, even if it, I mean, again, I've never done it, so I just thought, even if you got like, you
Even
got
if
a
we had to
pretty,
do it,
pretty good
maybe
idea.
break it up and do two.
Two.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's what I.
Okay, that's a
You
great
said it much
idea.
quicker than I was able to say.
All right. Yeah. So that,
So we would do it maybe on the 8th of June. We would we would adjourn our select board meeting and
yep, go into a goals.
then go into a goals work session.
Yeah,
I guess my only question is, I mean, it's a quasi-public meeting, isn't it? I mean, it's.
oh, if
Well,
anyone
somebody
wants
could
to
attend.
come.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
Right, it's just
Okay.
not televised. It's a work session,
okay.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
that's,
we're not, it's not an executive session,
Right.
it's just a work session, yeah.
Yep, okay.
so generally they haven't sent a camera for work sessions,
Right.
but the public would certainly be welcome to come.
I mean, I would be willing to do that as opposed to
Okay,
doing another.
I mean, we're really not taking any action, we're just talking about what our,
Right.
maybe our priorities might
Yeah.
be.
You know, it'd be nice if we could do them on nights with light agendas also.
yes, I'll try to.
Yeah,
Well, I thought we'd be out of here tonight by 6:45.
Ah, you've just been yakking away like
I'm
usual.
glad I've been quiet.
Okay, so 8th at the end of our regular meeting. Great. Okay, so moving on. We said we would have the West Dummerston Volunteer Fire Department Capital Fund campaign listed on our agenda each session. So do we have any updates?
Do we have any what?
Updates?
Updates?
Any new information?
Well, I forwarded a message to the select board with my correspondence with Rich Cagliano. And so if you haven't read that, I'll just say that it includes some information that came from Cindy Jerome, who outlined the basics of a capital fund drive. And I got a response already from Rich saying thank you, that he would read through it and get some comments on it, and he thought it was a good idea to have a few of his group get together, so he'll be in touch soon. So that's my update.
Yeah, and I've sent them an email about the timeline, and I didn't get a response from the email, but I've talked to the chief, Rick Lumen, a couple times. The last time was last night. I was at their DRB hearing. And actually, I thought they had intended to come tonight when I spoke to them last night, so something must have come up. But I just asked them the status of their 401, 501c3, and they said it was still in the process. I think they were working on that inventory, or they were close to having that done. So really, that's the only update, other than the DRB will get that probably in a month or so when they finish it. But they did their site visit last night, and they had their hearing last night for their would have been a conditional use, I believe, for the building over there. The only reps that were there beyond the Chief Lumen and Rich were Cindy Wilcox came from the church, and then I just I went there as a selectman, but not
Thank you.
representing the select board. So, and it was a very uneventful hearing. What else? I think that's really that's it I have from my discussions with them. Anyway, I think somehow we need to get that communication chain. I'd hope they'd made it tonight. Maybe we can get them here the next time to discuss, how to go forward with this. And I think assure them we're not trying to take over this thing. The capital. We're trying to assist them as opposed to we're not taking it from them. We're trying to facilitate, them, moving forward or offering them help and not, putting more burden on them to get it. So hopefully we can get them here next time, and that'd be my feeling anyway. Talk to them about that.
So, I actually spent a lot of time on this at the direction of the select board, I first tried to get a hold of Bill Hall, who wrote the original decision, and he's only
The original decision of the 501c3?
no, the original letter that came originally when Pam or Lori, I'm not sure who
Both
contacted
Pam and I were involved with that.
contacted him at the league, and he wrote a letter outlining a couple possibilities. I didn't get an answer from him, so then I emailed to the league itself.
Steve, is this the funding?
This was trying to look into the question of could the donations be given to the town and then given to the fire department, as a way to work through the 501c3 issue, where somebody could make a donation to the town. It would be tax deductible because they donated to the town. And I don't know if did all this information that came from Abby today go to all the select board members?
I forwarded
Okay,
it to them.
so it might be nice that everybody reviewed that, because it's hard for me to remember everything. And then I didn't get any response first time, so then I went back with another email to them. Just got an acknowledgement of it, but didn't get an answer for a day or two. Called and spoke with one person in the office, and then called and I spoke with Abby a couple times in the office. And nothing is clear, first off. And I would read all this information, so you're not taking it from me, you're getting it from them. The only thing is, once the town contacts an attorney, then the league, it's my understanding, likes to get out of it. And I guess back at that point, somebody
In
contacted...
November, Pam had correspondence with Michael McGillian.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, the league wants out of it. Once you consult the attorney, they figure you should work with them. And I'll tell you, I put a lot of work into this. And so then I got a hold of Bob, following up on my discussion with Abby, Bob Fisher, our town attorney. And it just continues to get more gray the more you look into it. But in a nutshell, and read all this please, but in a nutshell, Bob says the easiest way through this is for them to get their 501c3, have a capital fund drive, and then at the end of it, if there's a deficiency in funds, then come to the town and maybe try to raise the balance of the funds. Clearly that's the easiest way to do it, but even if you do that, we have to contact Bob. Bob would have to work with Garrett Baxter, probably. Garrett would have to work with legislature, I believe he told me. Because they aren't technically a town fire department. The more I look into this, the more confusing it gets. So it could be done. It just, my understanding is
It meaning people
we could
donating
actually
money to the town.
have a town
fund.
article
Mm-hmm.
to raise the balance of the money. But it isn't as simple as just putting an article on the...
Oh.
Bob said he would probably have to write the article. He would work with Garrett Baxter on it, who would work with legislature, because this is a little different because they're not technically a town fire department. However, it gets grayer because we do contribute to their operating funds on a yearly basis. And the town is required in some instances, to provide health and safety to our residences. So even though the state doesn't particularly have a statute that says this can be done, he felt it could be worked through. But it takes time. The other possibility in this whole thing is if the town wanted to have an article or have a special town meeting, raise the money for the building, but then the town would technically have to own the building. The town would have to do the disbursements for whoever's building it, and it would basically be a town building. And if we went and borrowed the money from a bank, the bank would want that too, because the town would be securing the loan with the building. And then at the end of all this, we'd sell it to the fire department for $1 or whatever the case may be. But clearly in both instances, the easiest way is the 501c3. And
But even so, you're saying, even if they get a 501c3 and people donate money that's tax deductible, if there's still a remainder that they need to raise, you're saying in that instance, there's still some gray area and a question.
there's not a gray area. Bob just said we would need to work with him on the language of the article. It's not as
Okay.
simple as us just putting in there, should the town raise
Okay.
X amount of dollars for the balance of the fire department. He said that we'd have to work with him, and he would work with Garrett Baxter, who would work with legislature to make sure this was
Cool.
copacetic.
And why is that different than when we give them, whatever, is it 80,000?
Well, that was going to be my next. I mean, I was talking to him on my phone in the middle of a rainstorm on Friday, and so I didn't have anywhere to write everything down. My next suggestion was going to be to the board is 2 people probably on the board should go down and meet with him directly,
Him.
but with Bob Fisher directly, if this is something we wanted to continue to try to pursue.
Do you mean the article?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to know that until the capital campaign has run its course. And Steve, not only do I think it's the 501c3 route is the easiest, I think it's also the best. And the nice part about the way I see this process of working itself through, first of all, I was most impressed with Cindy Jerome's work. It's the pyramid that we talked about, and I think I even mentioned take a look at the grand list and some other sources for prospective donors. I also suggested in an email to Rich, I think it's in the materials, that they establish a brokerage account, because some people are going to want to give appreciated securities and take a tax deduction for it, and they need to have a means by which they can do that. I think we could raise
Sufficient
most,
funds.
most if not all of these funds, and it's going to take a little while for them to get the 501c3 status, but during that time, we can work with them on developing this capital campaign.
Right.
And that was one of the things when all this started, when I talked with somebody that raises that their specialty, not their specialty, but they're involved in a lot of capital fund drives. They suggested that too, by the way, and I forgot to mention it the night we talked about it, that we definitely would want to get somebody, because people may want to give shares or
Exactly.
So, I mean, basically, that the 2 options appear to me to be like the town would have to take over the fire department building, take over the financing of it, the building of it, if we wanted to do it that way. Both places felt that obviously the cleanest way was the 501c3, but I was curious, Lori, I got to ask. I mean, the select board asked me to look into this. I was curious why you contacted the league about it.
Because I wanted to clarify the information that I was given back in November. Since the information wasn't the same that came from Michael McGillian, which is what I was going by because he is one of our town attorneys. And so I was just like I said, clarifying why. I mean, I have the right to call VLCT as town clerk or select
Yeah,
board
I
assistant.
just, it was odd, it was just strange to me why two of us were looking into it. I mean, one person could have done it. And
Well, that's why I shared all the information I found, and perhaps you could have shared the information with me too. That
I
would've been
didn't
great.
really have much until Tuesday this week. No, yeah, whatever day it rained. Yeah, yesterday was when I
Yeah.
met with Bob.
Well, I really think it's going to be best going to prospective donors saying, you know, that we're a 501c3, rather than, have the money funneled through the town. I mean, that just doesn't sound, quite right. I think that, I think it'll be more appealing for prospective donors if it goes directly to the fire department. And I, for one, don't think that the town should own the building. Do any of you think that?
Well, I don't think the suggestion is that the town own the building for the long term. It would be,
Just
it
to
would be a
facilitate
short-term
this.
solution.
Right.
But it does sound a little complicated.
Only complicated by the fact that Bob, our attorney, felt he should write the article, or the warning for the special town meeting, and work through the league and Garrett.
But if the capital campaign raises enough money, we won't have to. So,
I guess my feeling on this at the moment, I know that the intentions are all great. We're trying to fund this thing through the capital, but I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. They're an independent organization. I don't want to be taking this over from them, and I think this might be getting a little bigger than it needs to be for a small town. I could be wrong, but I don't this capital campaign to me is not professional fundraiser, saying that each one of these guys has to give $10. To me, the fact that they've got 40% of the money is a foundation. This is a small town, and they, what they do is, to me, that's sufficient to say that they're invested in getting this thing built. Now, that's a foundation to build on. How long are we trying to, what's the timeline for what is being spoken about? I mean, I don't see this going for 18 months or 12 months. I mean, this needs to be done. We're starting this. Granted, I believe they need that where they can get the nonprofit status so they can get the donations. But there's got to be an end date. This has to be closed by December 1st, so we can have this thing on the warning for the town meeting for March, whatever it is next year.
So we can have what on the town meeting for?
If there's any shortfall in funds from the so I'm saying this capital campaign needs an end date. We use this. It needs to be it's a small town. I
Concentrated.
mean, we're, however we want to go out, you have expertise, you have expertise to contact people and get donations in, but, and we're explaining what they're doing. Maybe it's an open house if we can coordinate with the fire department to show the drawings they have on the wall. I just, maybe I'm oversimplifying it. I don't think so, but I think we need to here's an outline. December 1st is the end of this thing. If things trickle in after that, great, but it's got to be in time to be warned on the town meeting. And I'm kind of like, do now and ask for forgiveness if you get caught. I don't understand why this is so complicated. If we can give them $80,000 a year in operating funds, why we can't provide a shortfall to have them build a building? I just, I'm happy to go be one of the guys that goes talk to the attorney. But sometimes you just need to press ahead. And I mean, what's the repercussion if you give them the shortfall? I mean, what are they going to do? Come back and tell us we can't have a building or something? I don't know, whoever they are. I don't know, but I just don't understand how you can provide them money for an operating expense, but you can't provide them money to build a building. So I'll volunteer to be one of those guys to go talk to the attorney.
Right.
And I can certainly go as well. I guess I was thinking more, December 31, just in that people, are often charitably inclined during December, and that would still give us a couple of months until town meeting.
I just say we need a date. Pick a date.
But that's a date for the volunteer fire department to set, not for us to set.
Well, I would say in this case, no, only because with them, because we don't want to take it over from them, but we haven't backdated, what's the end state. To me, it's backing the new truck in when the new truck comes, whatever that is. I haven't got that timeline from them. So I think it just needs to be based on when everything has to be done for the town report to be properly put into the warned for the town report. So when we meet next March, then the town is voting.
Yeah, and
on-
so in terms of the timeline, that's the piece that if we're gonna work together on this and we're going to go to the residents to contribute in that way, with
Right.
tax money, that's a deadline that we have, that we didn't agree to call a special meeting. We are agreeing that if there's a leftover amount to raise, that we would be willing to consider putting it on the regular town meeting.
Right, so
And so the deadline for the capital fund campaign would need to be such and such.
Well, I guess the time would be whenever they prepare the town report and they have to have all the information, we need to have a dollar amount that's going to go into that
Exactly.
warning. So whatever the end date.
So that helps to, that's a constraint in setting the time frame.
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And I've heard we got some feedback on this issue of sweat equity, and I sort of heard this a little bit from you as well. But I'd like to think anybody that volunteers for the fire department, I don't care if they contribute $10, something.
I would say, look, if that's the issue, I will write the check for the fire department.
Yeah, I think,
No,
I
no,
don't think that.
But
I
no,
don't
but
think we
think
need to
that's-
distract ourselves
No,
from that
let's
right
not
now.
go
that's not the
there.
point.
Yeah.
What professional fundraisers all tell you is that
But again,
But
everybody
you know
needs
what?
to buy in.
My wife is a
Yeah.
professional fundraiser.
Yeah.
And so she's dealing, with people, organizations where everyone's getting paid. And so they have a fundraising goal. Yeah, all the paid employees kick in some money, and these are not paid employees. These are volunteers. They're already working. I'd rather they just are kicking back, resting, so they can be fresh to come put out my chimney fire. I'll write the check for them. Find out, if there are 30 guys, I'll write how much you want from them. $10?
there you go.
I'll
Well, I
write
think
the check.
$50 is better.
Then I'll take the raise from the chair that you
Yeah.
offered before.
Well,
I think we should drop that
I agree. It's
from
not
the
just
table.
yeah.
They've got 40%. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got
Let-
more.
I
they've
think
they've
that's
got the
terrific, yeah.
sweat equity up. I'm good with that. An issue, we're planning all of this, but they do have the option, I haven't spoken with any of them since our last meeting, but the option exists and is out there that they can take out a petition to go ahead and with, I guess, about 85 signatures, they can request a special town meeting. And at that point, it's not, the only thing we can do at that point is just set the date. And we have
And
to
so
do
are
it
they
within
considering
60
doing
days.
that?
I don't know for sure, but it's, I think it's out there,
Yeah.
an option.
I mean, I'm sorry they're not here also. Concerned isn't quite the right word, but I'm curious that they haven't responded actively to Hugh's offer to work out a time frame. What that communicates to me is they're still debating it within themselves. They're not interested in changing the timeline that they brought to us at the last meeting. And their timeline was dependent on us calling a special meeting, which didn't happen. So I'm curious where they are as a group with that question of the time frame.
I mean, I think we're really sincere in our offer to help and work together with them. And I guess I'd have to say I'd be disappointed if they choose under the circumstances to, request a special town meeting.
It is there, it is an option.
I understand that, yeah.
That is something,
Well, I have an offer from Rich to meet with a small group, and so I'll move forward with
Great.
this.
Good.
And we said we'd have it on each agenda, so if we encourage them to come to our next meeting, we'll get more direct. I mean, that's what we want, is direct communication rather than sitting here
Right.
imagining,
Right. Sure.
We're looking for direct communication so that we can be helpful and collaborative in a way that works for everybody. And I think we came to something important here in this discussion, which is in terms of the time frame, the constraint that we would put forward has to do with putting it on the town, in the town
getting
report.
an article written and. the town
Yeah,
board.
and you've done important research in terms of that article and the complexities of that, so we would want to take that into account. And we would meet
Right.
with the lawyer, and you both have agreed to do that, so that's all good stuff.
Any more on this topic? Okay, well, thank you for the work you did,
Yeah, it sounds like we all.
calls you made, your correspondence, and Hugh. Thank you for all of that. So, any new business? My new business folder is empty.
Do you want to wrap it up, or you want me to give you 5 minutes on something that I learned today?
Yeah, I want to hear where you were today and what.
Would
Yeah.
that be other business?
That would be other business,
Okay,
sure.
so let's move on to other business.
Okay. Well, the first thing is this Act 64. Maybe you might have known this, Steve. I didn't, but starting fiscal 18, that's going to cost us $2,000 a year. So we know we're going to be budgeting that, along with a $400 check every 5 years. I must have missed that at the Select Board Institute because I went to another Act 64 thing today. So, then you guys are way ahead of me. So, and then the other thing is that whole water thing. I know we're going to probably talk more about Canoe Brook Road up here and how that's going to go. But so Jim Ryan, I'll put his name on the camera here. So he's the guy that has talked about the Act 64. But as far as water, we talk about how much water we can put on to property. And I tried to explain to him, you're balancing that with the residents, but he's like, on that one, I guess I don't know if we're cleaning that cut or not, and there's other things, but if you're moving water off the right of way, you can just channel that water, and then, according to him, where it goes after that is, we seem to be very concerned. I mean, as we should be. We're not going to just dump it onto somebody's lawn, but I think there's more to trying to that particular spot, getting that water out of there is not. We talk about you can't add water to anything, and that's not what I got. So I guess my point, I'll probably talk to Lee a little more, but I didn't. When I said that you can't add water to, we don't want to clean this cut down here because it's going to add water to. He's like, that's not. The state says you can. That's statute. You're putting water off the roadway as long as your cut is in your right of way. What happens to it after is. I don't want to say it's not a concern, but so I guess
You're not liable for
my whole point of this is that I think I'm learning as I go. There's more to this, as we try to solve that problem up there. And then there's some good stormwater, how to take care of stormwater things. That would be another discussion, but I guess my big thing was the money issue that you were obviously already aware of.
What was the training, Hugh?
So this was done by the University of Vermont Extension, but it was the Town Officers Education Conference. So they had a variety of things like the Select Board Institute has. You could pick different things. So the one I went to an Act 64 thing. They had, I think the Secretary of State was up there with a couple a professor, and then a tax guy, I guess, talking about property taxes, had community, you know, there's different things of how to develop and, you know, foster community and what you have, you know, the equity you have in, you know, communities, you know, it's not all just structurally, but there's, you know, there's other societal equity things you can have. So that's what it was. It was a course on, you know, different things. Again, the Act 64 you could go to. There was, you know, how to deal with difficult people if you wanted to go to that.
And it
one
was for
available.
town officers. It happens every year.
It does, yeah.
And has someone from this board gone to it before?
I haven't gone to
I
the
haven't gone,
extension.
Yeah.
No? Wow, great.
And there
Well,
are
thanks
people,
for
they've been
going.
doing it for 15, anyway, they've been doing it for a long time.
Great.
Yeah, they had, yeah, some very good people there putting on things, you know, like the same guy who did the Act 64 here was the guy that we saw up in Montpelier. He tweaked his program a little bit, and then he will be down here, well, he won't. Actually, he made Ludlow June 8th. I've got the date and time for Lee, but there's going to be like a road foreman's roundtable, which I would think would be very beneficial if Lee doesn't already have that on his calendar to you know, have him take the day and go to that thing. And as they, you know, they bring a lot of other, you know, the road foremans in to discuss, you know, what's going on throughout the state, particularly on these permitting for the Act 64 stuff. So that'd be a good one for Lee to attend when the time comes.
Speaking of Lee, and maybe when you're both driving home, you can take a look at this, but I had a friend of Debbie's complaining about the east-west road, the shoulders, just, you know, the steep drop-offs, and I took a look at it on the way up this morning and on the way here this afternoon, and I can see the point, you know, I mean, if your wheel gets off, you know, you could conceivably roll, you know, and I don't think it would take too much to just put some material in there just to build it up just a little bit, but take a look, and maybe when next time Lee's in, we could talk with him about that.
Okay.
So, sorry.
You
I do have one other thing, and it's more of a question. Somebody stopped at my house last night, and they fell on the town trail going up to Prospect. And they wanted to know who was responsible, and she was pretty banged up on her knees. And she wanted to know who was responsible for maintaining the trails, the town trails. And I didn't have a particularly good answer other than I thought it might be the Conservation Commission, or I said there's an ad hoc committee that's trying to set a trail up, but I think they've given up the section of trail that she may have fell on, although it wasn't clear if she was on the right-of-way that goes up to Prospect or on the snowmobile trail, that side trail. So I wasn't exactly sure where she fell, but I guess I wasn't, in fact I suggested that you're trying to have some trails over at Scott Farm that might be easier walking. But I guess there isn't any maintenance done, but I guess who is
right. I don't know
responsible?
what the town's liability
Right.
for people falling.
I was going to send them down to your house, but it was
Yeah.
about 8:30, so I thought
Yeah.
you were asleep. But
Ah,
it was an interesting question, and I gave her John Evans's name to contact because I know he's very prevalent in the trail committee, and then Mary Ellen's name as the Conservation Commission. But
yeah.
Did she stop because you're a select board member?
yeah, and she wanted to know why we weren't keeping the trail maintained. She felt it would be important to keep the brush cut and the leaves cleared off the trail, and the right of way up through there's, well, you've been up it, I think.
Yeah.
It's not a trail really. So anyway, I just am asking you.
Yeah,
In,
no, that's
in that
a-
instance,
that's
who
an
do we
interesting
turn
question.
to?
Yeah.
And,
You know, it almost sounds like a VLCT call.
I'll call for you, Steve.
yeah.
I wonder, you know, what other towns do when they have a town trail. This one's a pretty primitive
Right.
trail.
And I didn't. I mean,
I
as
mean,
far
maybe
as
signage
Yeah, that's
is
what
as
I
a piece
think.
of it. But why isn't the Prospect Hill trustees? Why wouldn't they
Well, that's
be
us,
involved?
and
I know it's
some other
us,
people,
but it's
but,
more
Yeah, we're half of the
yeah.
trustees.
right.
But it was an interesting
It hasn't
question.
It hasn't come up. This issue hasn't come up.
Well, are there plans for another Prospect Hill trustees meeting to address continuing
Yeah, sometime
work
I
with
thought it
their?
was in later in the late spring.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
and that's coming
So
up.
this is-
But, I mean, that would be a time to address that very question with them.
Mhm.
Should I ask Mary Lou when because she's the one that tends to convene the meeting.
Yeah.
Should I
Right.
ask when she imagines convening a meeting?
Yep.
I can do that.
Sure. All right.
And one other quick thing, did I misunderstand or
You know, in the old
mishear
days,
this?
if you went for a hike, you were,
You're on your own.
I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
Did we get the state funding for the culvert, or did we not get that grant?
We don't know yet.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody told me the other day we didn't get it. Okay, all right. Okay, that was my question.
Okay. All right. And you've done some.
I think I'm gonna save it. Yeah, I've done a little homework on
Okay.
the municipal employee evaluation process, and I'm still gathering information, so I'll wait to. It's
Okay.
10 of 8.
Sure. When we have a.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're looking for something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Great. Well, thank you for doing that.
So are we gonna? I skipped my thought. Never mind. It's late.
Okay.
I would move we adjourn unless there's not
So,
something
is
else.
there any other business to come before this august board? No? All right, then, if we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes seem to have it.
I'm sorry. I'm in deep thought.